Homage to the fundamental teacher Buddha Shakyamuni. Homage to the wisdom warrior Manjushri. Homage to all the lineage masters. The supreme subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate beings, please generate bodhicitta. Let us continue our study of the Platform Sutra. There is not much left. We are currently discussing specific stories in Chapter 7. Many parts of Chapter 7 contain the deeds of very famous enlightened masters in the Chan tradition. They may seem like short stories, but in reality, each master's experience shows how they relied on a spiritual teacher and attained enlightenment according to the Chinese Chan tradition. So for us, as later followers, it is indeed very necessary to learn these. However, I do not actually require you to write everything down in words, nor do I ask you to publicize any slight realization you might have. If you were to write down the states of realization you have experienced, those studying Chan or Tantric teachings today should indeed have some realizations. There is no doubt about this. According to the solemn and strict traditions of our lineage masters, especially regarding the enlightenment experiences of monastics, you are required to keep them as secret as possible. This includes various visions you see or special dreams you have. Unless absolutely necessary, they should generally not be disclosed. Everyone should be clear on this. As we study the Platform Sutra this time, I hope that whether you are here at the Academy or fellow practitioners listening online, you should all feel a sense of joy. I mention this before every class, and the reason is I personally feel that studying such a Chan teaching is a wonderful opportunity for us. People in big cities today are restless and busy every day. In fact, rushing and searching daily does not necessarily bring true happiness. But for us to have this learning opportunity every day can actually be considered a form of happiness in life. At the very least, while listening to this class, your gross afflictions are absent. You should be spending this time filled with the Dharma joy of the Mahayana. I think this is a kind of enjoyment in this very life for us. Regarding the Platform Sutra, I had only read it literally in the past, but after reading it more carefully this time, I have a different feeling. The great masters and people of ancient times placed great importance on spiritual culture and the spiritual value of realization. Whereas we busy worldly people today, drifting and struggling every day, must ask, does life actually have meaning? Every wise person who observes with wisdom will reach a certain conclusion. Let us continue. In the Platform Sutra, there are different stories every day. Of course, many fellow practitioners might worry about the exam since this is classical Chinese. It seems the mention of exams weighs on the mind, especially for those who take their studies seriously. For those who wish to make a Dharma offering but lack the time, it feels like a burden. But actually, I feel that my requirement this time is not to scrutinize every single word, nor do I require you to memorize every single verse. But what is the requirement? You should know what the Platform Sutra is actually about, what the central theme of each chapter is, what the main topics are, or how many cases are discussed in each chapter, and which of these cases are symbolic. These are not exam questions. You don't need to write them down. It is useless, because my current discursive thoughts might not represent the wisdom I will have when creating the exam, but my current thinking. Of course, when you study, you must take it seriously. Why do I say this? The reason is that some people, when exams aren't mentioned, sit in the rows, listening to the Dharma, seemingly listening intently and attentively, yet without a sense of responsibility. But once the exam is mentioned, they think, oh, I need to understand this. So generally looking at the attitude, the listening attitude of those in the exam class, is completely different from that of other fellow practitioners. Those here who are under exam pressure are basically all holding pens and taking notes very intently, whereas among other fellow practitioners, many might be relaxing at that time. So I think exams are actually a method to forcibly increase wisdom, or a way to activate our potential. So when I mentioned exams a couple of days ago, I didn't mean to harm you on purpose. We discussed a case earlier, and today we arrive at this one. Bhikshu Zhichang, a native of Guishi in Hsinchu, joined the order in his childhood. With a zealous desire to realize his true nature, one day he came to pay homage. Master Zhichang was from Xinzhou, a place in present-day Jiangxi. Specifically, he was from a place called Guiqi in Xinzhou. Tiaonian refers to childhood. He ordained very early. Actually, many great masters of the Chan school rarely ordained in middle age. Many began their monastic life when they were very small. Nowadays, some people here wanted to ordain very early, but conditions were not met in various aspects. Policies in some places also state that one cannot be ordained before 18. There are such sayings in individual places. The other day, talking to a leader, they said in certain Tibetan areas, one cannot ordain before 18. I joked at the time. The Karmapa was ordained before 18, recognized by the state council. The Panchen Lama was also ordained before 18, also recognized by the state council. Why can't little monks ordain at 18 while big figures can? Who made this policy? He said, that is a special situation. I asked, what kind of special does this refer to? It was a joke, but there are indeed various situations in this world. So I think, whether in Tibetan Buddhism or Chinese Buddhism, like Master Zhichang, he ordained when he was very young. From childhood, he had a zealous desire to realize his true nature. He yearned to realize the nature of the mind since he was little. This makes a difference. Some of our fellow practitioners, perhaps due to older age or whatever, have no interest in realizing the true nature. They are interested in eating and accumulating wealth. You can see this in their daily conversation. Generally speaking, some people like to talk about eating and drinking. How is my father, my mother, husband, wife? What was I like when I was a lay person? Some lay people spend every day talking mostly about worldly life. The topics a person discusses frequently reveal where they have afflictions. For example, if a person talks about their enemies all day, it shows they have serious anger in their mind stream. If a person talks about their past or present lovers all day, their attachment in their mind stream is quite heavy, and so on. You can see a person's afflictions and suffering from their speech. So, among people in our current life, indeed very few seek wisdom, history, or humanities. In universities now, very few people study actual history or religious studies departments. There are so many people in finance. As long as they can pass the exam, many like money and how to make money. So if you look at the various universities, you can see this. But looking at Master Zhichang, from childhood, he placed special importance on recognizing the nature of his own mind. One day he came before the sixth patriarch and began to pay homage and bow to him. The master asked, "Where do you come from and what do you seek?" At that time, the sixth patriarch asked the monk Zhichang, "After arriving, where exactly did you come from? You came here today to bow to me. Do you have any requests? Is there something you need from me?" Zhichang answered like this: "Your student has recently been to Baifeng Mountain in Hongzhou to pay homage to Master Datong. Although I received instructions on the meaning of realizing true nature and becoming a Buddha, my doubts are not yet resolved. I have come from afar to pay homage and humbly hope that the High Master will instruct me." He says, "Your student," referring to a humble disciple. Some people say, "Disciple this, disciple that." Disciple has a headache. Disciple feels uncomfortable. Some fellow practitioners come from dojos where it is required not to use one's name, but must add disciple. So every sentence has 2 or 3 disciples added in. It is the same here, because just now the monk, the sixth patriarch, asked, "Where exactly do you come from? What do you seek here? Do you seek empowerment here, blessings, or a head-touching blessing?" When some people ask for a head-touching blessing, if I tap them on the shoulder, they get confused. Just now, a fellow villager asked for a head-touching blessing. I patted him on the shoulder, and he didn't know what that meant. Head-touching and touching the shoulder should be the same, right? It seems head-touching implies a difference in status, high and low. Tapping or shaking hands, on one hand, perhaps gives a feeling of equality, and I also feel it is friendlier. For me, it seems to have this feeling. So what did he come here for? Where was he from? He said he recently went to Baifeng Mountain in Hongzhou. There he bowed to a great monk named Master Datong. At that time, he was grateful to request teachings on the meaning of realizing one's nature and becoming a Buddha. Zhichang first went to rely on Master Datong, asking for instructions that point directly to the nature of the mind. However, during his quest, his fox doubts were not resolved. That is to say, his doubts. Among animals, the fox is generally extremely suspicious. It buries the food it gets in the ground, worries someone will take it, and buries it in another place. So generally among animals, the fox has a particularly strong suspicious nature. Therefore, in the process of our practice, we must eliminate certain doubts. If one has too many fox-like doubts, nothing will seem right, and one will be stuck in indecision. Due to karma from past lives, some people fail to develop a firm conviction in the true Dharma and right view. Instead, they constantly harbor wrong or evil views. Various doubts, prejudices, and unwholesome ideas arise naturally within them. At that time, it seemed he had not successfully resolved his issues regarding the Dharma of realizing one's nature. Because his questions remained unanswered, he traveled from afar to this place, bowed respectfully before the master, and asked for guidance. Regarding this master, Datong mentioned here, some records identify him as Master Shenshu, as Datong was a title posthumously bestowed upon him by the emperor. However, other sources argue that this identification is illogical. At the time of this story, Master Shenshu would likely still have been alive. Furthermore, historical accounts do not place Master Shenshu at Baifeng Mountain. Chronologically, since it wasn't after his passing, it is unlikely Zhichang could have sought him out using that title then, so the timing doesn't quite add up. Some also say that apart from Shenshu, there is no record of another prominent Master Datong whom he could have followed. They argue this because such a figure isn't found in relevant documents. But I believe both of these arguments are not necessarily correct. Even if the teacher Zhichang followed was indeed Shenshu, there is nothing illogical about history later recording him as Datong. By the time the text was written, he had already passed away. So, using that name is not unreasonable. As for the second point, that because there's no record of a Master Datong, this account might be a later fabrication. I think that's impossible. Even if no famous Master Datong appears in existing literature, he might have been an extraordinary practitioner hidden in a remote mountain forest. A lack of written records does not mean a great master did not exist. Take Tibet, for instance. There are many incredible spiritual teachers who never appeared in history books. The same applies to Chinese Buddhism. There are numerous realized masters and virtuous teachers not mentioned in the biographies of eminent monks or other records. So when some modern commentators of the Platform Sutra suggest this story was likely a later addition, I find that their reasoning lacks real substance. Earlier, the sixth patriarch asked, "Where are you from and why are you here?" Zhichang had already explained his origin. He had recently come from the monastery of Master Datong at Baifeng Mountain. His purpose was also clear. He had sought the Dharma of pointing to the mind, but remained unresolved. Thus, it's quite obvious why he came here to seek the Dharma. The master said, "What did he say?" Try to repeat his words. He said, "I'd like to hear." What he said refers to what kind of teachings Master Datong gave you. Give me an example so I can hear and see for myself. What exactly was the nature of the instructions he gave his disciples? I want to know what your Master Datong taught. Generally, when a student from one monastery goes to another, they are always asked this. It's the same now and will be in the future. Many masters will want to understand first. Chan Master Zhichang then recounted his experience. I was there for 3 months without receiving any guidance. Due to my earnestness for the Dharma, I entered the abbot's room alone one night and asked, "What is my original mind and nature?" He said, "I, Zhichang, went to Master Datong at Baifeng Mountain. I stayed there for 3 months specifically to seek the Dharma. During those 3 months, he did not give me any profound instructions on how to realize the mind's nature. No specific teachings or guidance were given. Because I had already spent so much time there and my desire for the Dharma was extremely urgent, one night I went alone and directly entered the master's private quarters. I truly could not wait any longer after 3 months. Some of our fellow practitioners today start pushing us after just 3 days. They call through various people saying, 'I can't wait, my bus is leaving.' I've already waited 2 days or a whole night." In the past, when seekers wanted to meet a master, those masters might not teach them anything for 3 months, instead requiring them to do manual labor. But his resolve for the Dharma was very intense. One night he went directly to the abbot's room. He asked point blank, "What is mujya?" referring to his own nature. Mujya is a sort of humble pronoun here. What is my original nature really like? Regarding this pursuit of one's nature, one's own conviction and sincerity are very important. Some people truly want to realize their nature. They dedicate all their time to this for years. Some are driven to benefit all beings. Some use skillful means to transmit the Dharma to others. Everyone should have at least one aspiration or goal. Even if spreading the Dharma or realizing one's nature feels out of reach, one can still honestly recite sutras and do meaningful deeds. Everyone needs an ideal or a dream in life. If you have no goal and just eat and drink every day, it's perhaps not quite right. Observe his sincerity. His mindset for seeing his nature was incredibly strong. He went there to ask about his nature. By what method can one truly recognize this nature? In Vajrayana, except for a few individuals with exceptional capacities, such direct transmission is rare. Basically, it is not done this way. In Chan Buddhism, however, there are indeed masters who still transmit the Dharma directly today. Datong then said, "Do you see the empty space?" Zhichang replied, "I see it." He asked what his original nature was, so the master began by asking him, "Do you see the empty space?" Zhichang replied that he had indeed seen it. Actually, there is nothing to be seen in emptiness, but in the verse summary of Prajnaparamita, there is a verse. Sentient beings claim to see the empty space. How can space be seen? Observe this meaning. The Buddha said seeing the Dharma is the same. It cannot be explained by any other analogy. Some beings claim to see space, but how? One must analyze this. Since space has no inherent nature, what is there to see? It is like the son of a barren woman or a rabbit's horn. With no inherent nature, what can you see? But perhaps in a conventional or relative sense, one asks, "Do you see the space?" He replied, "I have seen it." The master asked, "Do you see any appearance or features in the space?" The master asked further, "If you see the empty space, does it have any characteristics?" Zhichang replied, "Space is formless. What appearance could it have?" "Didn't you just say you saw it? Now you say it has no appearance." What he likely saw was the featureless space. The master asked, "Since you see the space, does it have any marks?" He replied, "Space itself is formless. How could it have an appearance?" At this point, he was answering truthfully. The master said, "Your original nature is like empty space. Seeing that there is not a single thing to be seen is called right view. Knowing that there is not a single thing to be known is called true knowledge. It has no colors like blue or yellow, nor shapes like long or short. Simply perceiving the original source as pure and the essence of awakening as perfectly luminous is called realizing one's nature and becoming a Buddha, or the insight and vision of the Tathagata." These words represent a very profound pointing out instruction in Chan Buddhism. He asked if Zhichang saw the space. Zhichang said yes. Then he asked if it had an appearance. Zhichang said no. This implies an indirect answer. I have seen the emptiness that has no characteristics. Seeing here is not necessarily with the eyes, but with wisdom. Then Master Datong told him, "Your original nature is just like empty space." Wasn't Zhichang just trying to find this original nature? Your nature is like space. What is the characteristic of space? Thoroughly realizing that there is nothing to be seen, no visible object. This is the view of space. The sutras also say, to see nothing is to truly see empty space. This is called right view. Having nothing to be known is called true knowledge. It is a form of pure awareness. It is not defined by colors like blue, yellow, white, or black, nor by shapes like long, short, round, or square. It has none of these. Yet one sees that the original source is pure, and the essence of awakening is perfectly luminous. The essence is fundamentally pure, and this awakening is inherently perfect and bright. This is called realizing one's nature and becoming a Buddha, or the insight of the Tathagata. This particular passage, I believe, Master Datong must have given him the most profound teaching. But perhaps he lacked the karmic connection with this master. just like Milarepa, who initially went to see Rongten Laga. Rongten taught him the Dzogchen, the path where meditating by day brings Buddhahood by day, and meditating at night brings Buddhahood by night. A path where those with the connection become Buddhas even without meditating. But as a result, Milarepa thought, my Hail magic and destructive rites were mastered in such a short time. I must have the capacity. And encountering this path means I definitely have the connection. Then Milarepa just slept all day, and as a result, he didn't resonate with the Dharma. Finally, the master said, it seems you have heavy negative karma after all. There's no use staying with me. Go to Marpa the translator instead. Later, he went to Marpa. After enduring countless hardships, he achieved realization through Mahamudra. So, from a historical perspective, Milarepa's karmic link for realization was with Mahamudra, not Dzogchen. Looking at Chan Master Zhichang. Actually, for me, this teaching feels very close to the secret Mantrayana. If I were to attain enlightenment, it might be through this very teaching. But at the time, he didn't. This teaching might focus a bit more on emptiness, but actually, look at what was transmitted. Nothing to be seen is right view. Nothing to be known is true knowledge. This is equivalent to establishing primordial emptiness. Yet, in a state where there is no object to be seen or known, the luminosity of the Buddha nature is fundamentally perfect and present. This is called realizing one's nature and the insight of the Tathagata. I think this is very similar to Dzogchen in the secret Mantrayana, especially His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche's placing Buddhahood within reach. The section on primordial purity is very much alike. The essence of the mind is empty, but it is not a blank emptiness. Rather, it is the great emptiness free from all conceptual elaborations. This great emptiness, luminosity, and purity are indivisible and inherently present. This is your nature. This is what you should recognize. Actually, when any of us look back at our own minds with such pith instructions, those with a connection might realize it instantly. Although Zhichang did not awaken before Datong at that time, some of us might attain realization through this. To recognize the mind's nature, if those with affinity look inward briefly, oh, so what the beings in this world have not realized. When I look back at myself now, I actually understand completely. If we master the nature of our minds, what afflictions, pain, or entanglements could still exist in this world? There would be none. It is precisely because we, ordinary beings, have not recognized our nature that we wander aimlessly in confusion. It is actually quite accessible. This is not just a legend. In modern terms, it is very scientific. The source of our suffering is the mind. What is the nature of the mind? It is emptiness and luminosity. Emptiness and luminosity. I can know this by looking inward briefly. If I realize that the mind's original nature has always been like this, then everything I worry about is merely like spinning a cocoon to imprison oneself. In reality, in the fundamental essence, these things do not exist at all. Such truths can be understood theoretically by some, but for others they should be revealed through pith instructions and other forms of spiritual guidance. I believe the Dharma Master Datong transmitted to him must have been very profound. Though I have heard this teaching, I am still not clear. I beg the Master for guidance. Even though he heard those instructions mentioned above, as a humble student, he was unable to resolve his major doubts. So today he traveled a long distance to see Master Huineng. Plus, as the sixth Patriarch, your reputation is quite great, and I too appreciate fame. So I have come before you, hoping the great Master will grant me guidance. Perhaps this Master Datong, since there are no historical records of him, might have been an obscure monk. Even if he had realization and attainments, he wasn't very famous. Thus, Zhichang came before the great Master, Huineng. The Master said, your teacher's words still harbor views and knowledge. That is why you are not yet clear. I shall now give you a verse. The sixth Patriarch said that what Master Datong taught in a certain sense was explained very well. However, there remains a conceptual grasp, a view of emptiness and a knowledge of emptiness, so there is a reason why you haven't fully realized the nature of the mind. Today I can give you the real reason. The reason for your lack of understanding is this. Today, I will use a verse to give you pith instructions on pointing to the mind's nature. May you instantly understand its profound meaning right now. Then he spoke the following. To see no Dharma, yet retain a view of nothing, is like floating clouds obscuring the sun. To know no Dharma, yet cling to a knowledge of emptiness, is like a lightning bolt in the vast sky. Master Datong taught you some mere emptiness teachings. With mere emptiness you cannot fully understand, and there is a reason for that. To see no Dharma, seeing nothing. Didn't he say earlier, there is not a single thing to be seen? Nothing at all. To not see a single Dharma, not a single phenomenon. Such a state actually still holds onto a view of non-existence. This view of non-existence is like dark clouds blocking the light of the sun. In truth, mere emptiness is also a kind of obscuration. A teaching from the Maharatnakuta Sutra says, if one cogitates on the Dharma of emptiness, such a worldling dwells in a wrong path. If one meditates on an emptiness that is just a concept, in reality, such an ordinary person still dwells in a wrong view. If you meditate on a conceptual emptiness, because that emptiness completely obscures your true nature, you cannot fully realize the mind's nature. In the history of Tibetan Buddhism, Lama Tsongkhapa initially proclaimed some emptiness teachings for people. Regarding these emptiness teachings, some later great masters said, these are very profound emptiness methods to lead beings to sever their clinging to reality. But some ordinary and deluded people could not understand them. They mistook it for nihilism or a blank emptiness. There are such interpretations. I recall the Mahaparinirvana Sutra mentioned, hearing the Buddha speak the teaching of emptiness as a skillful means for beings. The fool cannot understand, thinking it means all words and paths are severed. Some fools cannot understand it at all. They think it is nihilism, a blank void, or a mere nothingness. This kind of interpretation has existed since ancient times. Even now, some scholars or researchers who haven't practiced well, as soon as they talk about Buddhist emptiness, say, doesn't Buddhism say to see through everything? Doesn't it say all is empty? If all is empty, then why do you chant sutras or prostrate? Why chant the Buddha's name or study scriptures every day? Doesn't the Diamond Sutra say, all that has form is illusory? Is it not all illusory? Is it not all emptiness? Many people talk like this, but in fact this way of thinking is illogical. First, sentient beings since beginningless time need to sever their wrong views and knowledge. The Maharatnakuta Sutra also says it is better to have a wrong view as big as Mount Meru than a view of emptiness, nihilism. If one has a view of emptiness, it is incurable. Because wrong views can be countered with the view of emptiness, but the view of emptiness itself cannot be countered, meaning it's hard to sever. Therefore, the teaching here says such a view of emptiness is illogical. To know no Dharma, yet cling to a knowledge of emptiness. If you dwell in the idea that nothing exists and nothing can be known, then in reality you are just guarding a Dharma of emptiness that is mere ignorance. It is like a lightning bolt appearing in the vast sky. The entire void is boundless, but a lightning bolt in the middle is actually a kind of obstruction. Within nothingness, you have found something. Originally, space is empty, but if there is lightning, then within that space, there is a Dharma that the mind grasps onto. Similarly, all Dharmas do not exist inherently, but if this knowing of not knowing exists, it is also illogical. So we must understand here, the great masters of the past in Chan Buddhism never taught a mere singular emptiness. Everyone should know this. Such a view arises in an instant. How could mistaking this lead to understanding skillful means? You should recognize your own error in a single thought, and your own spiritual light will always manifest. The following part mainly discusses the six patriarchs' own true insight. He said, such a view arises suddenly, and to mistake it for the ultimate state is wrong. It is illogical. If you mistake it for true realization of the mind's nature, then when can true liberation, skillful means, and the nature of wisdom actually manifest? If we take not knowing and not seeing as the ultimate state, then when will we truly realize the nature of all phenomena? So he continues, recognize your own error in a single thought, and your own spiritual light will always manifest. You should realize this for yourself instantly. Knowing one's error actually means clearly observing your own mind and realizing your true nature in that moment. At that point, the great luminosity of your Tathagatagarbha will manifest naturally. It is inseparable from the emptiness mentioned before. When you rest in the present moment, it is not a mere blank emptiness. This state, where emptiness and luminosity are non-dual, can then manifest. In fact, this kind of manifestation is also described in the Buddhist sutras. For instance, the Maharatnakuta Sutra says, being free from all conceptualization, one attains the great Dharma light. Since all dharmas lack inherent nature, luminosity also lacks inherent nature. Because all phenomena lack inherent nature, luminosity itself is also without inherent nature. Therefore, we see that such teachings exist within the Sutrayana as well. It is just like the state of the non-duality of clarity and emptiness in Vajrayana. He said, when you truly rest in the present moment and recognize this nature, recognizing that the essence is empty, yet the nature manifests as spiritual light. This spiritual light is a form of luminosity or wisdom. I recall Chan Master Baizhang once said, the spiritual light shines alone, and the essence reveals the true and eternal, meaning this light flows forth naturally. Unfettered by words, the mind nature is unstained. I've forgotten a section in the middle, but the end is something like, this is the Buddha of thusness. It is no different from the true Buddha. It is exactly the same as the real Buddha. There are 2 or 3 more lines in between. The point is, when this true spiritual light manifests, what we call the direct perception of luminosity in Vajrayana, it cannot be expressed through words or conceptual thoughts. Its essence is beyond verbal description. In fact, this luminosity is similar to certain Vajrayana practices, such as seeing luminosity by gazing into the empty sky. It is actually a reflection or a radiant glow of the Tathagatagarbha. This is cultivated through pith instructions. In the Chan tradition, it is the immediate realization, seeing the nature and realizing the mind. Actually, looking at the literal meaning, I think Master Datong's pointing out method was perhaps easier to understand. But the 6th Patriarch's final sentence, recognize your own error in a single thought, and your own spiritual light will always manifest. Perhaps it is this sentence that captures the non-duality of emptiness and luminosity in the present moment. Having heard the verse, his mind became clear and open, and he spoke this verse. When Master Zhichang heard these words from the 6th Patriarch, his mind was suddenly enlightened. You could say he awakened instantly, or mastered the nature of the mind then and there. Then he composed the following verse of realization. Views and knowledge arose for no reason. Clinging to marks, I sought Bodhi. Keeping a single thought of awakening in the mind, how could I transcend past delusions? The source of awakening is the essence of self-nature. Following reflections, it drifted in vain. Without entering the Master's room, I was lost between the 2 extremes. He said that previously views and knowledge arose without cause. Earlier there was the view of emptiness and the knowledge of emptiness. Carrying those baseless, groundless views, those views of emptiness, and seeking Bodhi with attachment to marks, one is actually still holding onto a thought of awakening, the desire to get enlightened. With that, how could one, the word ning here means how, or in what way? How could one transcend the past, the delusions from beginningless time? Because we ourselves, the sole cause for sentient beings wandering in samsara since beginningless time is attachment. At the most ultimate level, if one still holds on to a mere emptiness or carries the thought of I want to awaken, if one harbors such a thought while seeking Bodhi, how can one transcend the delusions of the past? In fact, those past delusions are also a form of conceptual thought. Conceptual thought is the cause of the 3 realms. How can it truly lead to the realization of our nature? Next, he says, the source of awakening is the essence of self-nature. Actually, this awakening, this nature of the mind, is already inherently complete within us. It is only that following the wild and arrogant mind, it wanders outward and has never been brought back into the inner chamber of the lineage masters. Our mind is like a prince who has left his palace. He was originally a prince of high status, but he left the palace and has been wandering outside ever since, failing to return, just like that. Lost between the two extremes. We sentient beings are lost, sometimes falling into the extreme of nihilism, thinking everything is non-existent, and sometimes falling into the extreme of eternalism. We fail to see that luminosity and emptiness are non-dual. If we truly understood their non-duality because of luminosity, one does not fall into nihilism. It's not just mere emptiness. And because of emptiness, one does not fall into eternalism. If it were truly eternal in a permanent sense, the essence would not be empty. Regarding the states of realization, we could put it this way. It is through an inner search that one finally finds the mind's nature. But looking at the literal text, what did Master Zhichang negate in this verse? He negated seeking realization and bodhi with a mind of attachment in the first part, and he stated in another way. The mind is originally luminous, but it flows outward with conceptual thoughts, never finding its true essence, failing to return and wandering outside indefinitely. By implication, our inner prince, our inner king, is actually already right beside us. We simply haven't recognized him. When one recognizes this, they will not fall into the two extremes, but will surely enter the right path. Generally speaking, this kind of mind Dharma, nowadays, many people seek it in various ways, some through formal meditation, and some through methods that aren't necessarily traditional Chan, but involve, for example, long periods of silence or arduous physical journeys. I know a few celebrities and journalists who recently climbed Mount Everest at altitudes over 5,000 meters in a program called The Power of Walking. Like Chen Kun, they were there for a while recently. It seems they walked long distances every day, carrying loads of about 25 kilograms. They maintained silence while dealing with oxygen deprivation. Of course, they did a lot of training at first, how to set up camp, how to walk, and how to sleep at night. After training, they kept silent and had to observe their own minds while ascending. Some turned back halfway because they couldn't make it. Others kept going. After reaching their destination, they returned. This method is also considered a kind of pith instruction for seeking the soul. Modern people see it this way. I suppose it is a method. If one has lineage pith instructions and truly engages in that kind of searching, like specific practices in our Vajrayana, then it should be effective. Without any pith instructions, merely searching with conceptual thoughts, perhaps it helps in taming the mind, that is, achieving mental quietude. But regarding the recognition of the mind's nature, there will be difficulties without pith instructions. It's just that with our current impetuous and chaotic minds, it is sometimes very necessary to have a powerful force to stop them. Our mind is like a monkey. It doesn't rest for even a single moment. A couple of days ago, I observed a child about 7 years old. I watched him for an hour. He couldn't stay still for a second. He was extremely busy, picking up this, then that, standing up one moment, sitting down the next. I see we don't have many children here, but that is how they are. He simply could not stop for even an instant. Our minds are the same. There are such metaphors in the sutras, like lightning, wild winds, children at play, or monkeys. There are many metaphors. Using these methods to help the mind rest is very necessary. This concludes the section on the methods of reliance for awakening. One day, Zhichang asked the master, the Buddha spoke of the 3 vehicles, and also of the supreme vehicle. I do not understand. I pray you will teach me. One day he asked another question. The Buddha sometimes speaks of the 3 vehicles, yet in other sutras he speaks of the supreme vehicle. Actually, this supreme vehicle is likely the Vajrayana. I do not understand. I don't understand if there are 3 vehicles or if there is a supreme vehicle. I cannot comprehend it. I hope the master will explain it to me. The master said, observe your own original mind. Do not cling to external appearances. There are no 4 vehicles in the Dharma. The differences lie in the human mind. He said, observe your own original mind. Do not be attached to external forms. The Dharma does not have 4 vehicles. It is just that human minds have various levels of difference. The Lankavatara Sutra says, the vehicles are inexhaustible. They arise because of the mind. When the mind ceases, there is neither vehicle nor one who rides it. Great vehicle or small vehicle, actually, these do not exist in the nature of the Dharma itself. They are merely established by our human minds. Once our conceptual thoughts are extinguished, all vehicles cease to exist. So in terms of Dharma, there are no vehicles. They are only established by the human mind. Seeing, hearing, and reciting is the small vehicle. Realizing the Dharma and understanding the meaning is the middle vehicle. Practicing according to the Dharma is the great vehicle. To penetrate all dharmas, be complete in all dharmas, be unstained by anything. To transcend all marks and attain absolutely nothing, this is the supreme vehicle. He discusses three vehicles here: hearing, seeing, and reciting the sutras. This is the small vehicle path. Liking to look, liking to hear, liking things with marks, forms. Some lay practitioners today are like this. They aren't very interested in true hearing, contemplation, and practice. They take something, eat a nectar pill, or drink some nectar water. They think this is the real Dharma. Here, let me drink some. It's so sweet, so fragrant. This is called the small vehicle Dharma, or reciting scriptures, getting up at 4 a.m. to chant and recite. Because they do very little contemplative practice, this is called the small vehicle Dharma. What is the middle vehicle? Not just hearing, but fully understanding the meaning of the Dharma and realizing its principles. This is called the middle vehicle. And beyond understanding and hearing, to have actual practice, this is the great vehicle. This is similar to our hearing, contemplation, and practice. Hearing alone is the small vehicle. Contemplating and realizing the meaning is the middle vehicle. Not just hearing and contemplating, but practicing continuously. This is the great vehicle. What is the supreme vehicle? To penetrate all dharmas and be complete in all dharmas, understanding the nature of all things, realizing the inherent self-luminosity within all dharmas, unstained by anything, transcending all marks. The luminous essence is fully present, unstained by afflictions like greed, anger, or ignorance, free from notions of existence, non-existence, right or wrong, attaining nothing. This attaining nothing is not blank emptiness, it is the supreme attainment of nothing. In fact, this is called the supreme vehicle. He didn't explicitly use the word Vajrayana, secret mantra, but it is essentially that. I consider it Vajrayana, the supreme vehicle above the three vehicles, because above the three vehicles there is still the supreme vehicle. If people argue later, I will use this teaching to refute them. I'll keep it close at hand. When the time comes to use it, I'll strike with it, using their own spear to strike their own shield, right? When some Chan practitioners say Vajrayana is illogical, I will quote this. The vehicle is about practice, not verbal debate. You must practice it yourself. Do not ask me. At all times your self-nature is spontaneously thus. He says the meaning of the vehicle is not found in words. It is for us to practice. Great vehicle, small vehicle, or Vajrayana, whatever the vehicle for those with the affinity, it is indeed the supreme vehicle. For instance, if someone has no affinity for Vajrayana but a strong one for the small vehicle, for them, that is the supreme vehicle. It is about your own practice. The sixth Patriarch said, "Don't keep asking me, practice it yourself. Why keep asking questions? You don't read books at all, but carry a slip of paper everywhere to ask questions. You didn't awaken with Master Datong, and now you ask me every day. Don't ask me anymore." At all times, observing yourself is enough, right? At all times, your self-nature is spontaneously thus. You should just practice and observe on your own at all times. Stop asking questions every day. Zhichang bowed in gratitude and served the master for the rest of his life. Zhichang was extremely grateful after hearing so many pith instructions. He remained as his attendant to repay the guru's kindness. It wasn't a case of getting the Dharma and then treating the guru like a deer and the Dharma like musk. Using the weapons of a student and the killing methods of a hunter to take the Dharma, not at all. He didn't just run off without looking back after getting the musk-like Dharma. Many people, before receiving the Dharma from a guru, are all smiles and behave very well. After they get the Dharma, they ignore him and leave. But he wasn't like that. He stayed with the Guru for the rest of his life until the sixth Patriarch passed away. This is a way of long-term gratitude toward one's Guru. Repaying kindness is indeed, regardless of which Guru, which parent, or which person you have an affinity with, I feel it is very important. Because if you don't have such a heart of gratitude, it will be very difficult for the blessings of the lineage gurus to enter your heart. So for everyone in the process of relying on any guru, of course, if at the beginning you feel no affinity with a guru, then staying for 3 months or a certain number of days and then going elsewhere is also reasonable. Look at Milarepa. How long did he stay with Rongton Laga? But later he went to Marpa Lotsawa. Zhichang also stayed with Master Datong for 3 months. The methods there didn't suit him, so he went to the sixth Patriarch. After finding the sixth Patriarch, he never left again. So I often tell everyone, nowadays many people's minds are quite chaotic and change very fast. Some say modern Chinese food has issues, so the mind is unstable. I've asked others before, why are people so... Today, the desire to seek the Dharma is incredibly strong, but a couple of days later, they turn into a completely different person. Today, this person seems very steady and composed. 2 days later, they've changed completely, acting out of character. They said, this is related to your diet. There are many hormones in the food, so human physiology has been disrupted, thus views and mindsets are unstable. I really hope that everyone, no matter what you do, you don't necessarily have to stay at the academy or in a specific practice center, but your mind must be. Once you've chosen a Dharma method for your life, ideally, don't change it before you die. And make a vow when you are dying. In life after life, I will use this Dharma to benefit sentient beings. I will use this Dharma to tame my own afflictions. This is very important. Otherwise, indeed, the current mindset, it's not just the people around us, it is a widespread phenomenon. Like big companies in Han areas, Alibaba, McDonald's, how many people every year? I was surprised by the data I saw the other day. By comparison, the practitioners at our academy are relatively steady. In those companies, the number of people who leave every year is quite massive. But this isn't necessarily a good thing. Our mindset, it's possible to have occasional afflictions or bad feelings. But as a matter of principle, as human beings, we must steady ourselves. The Dharma we practice, the work we do, the friends we keep, the family we have. Don't be very close to someone today, and then 2 days later, suddenly, the lifestyle of worldly people today is quite frightening, not just in Tibet, but in Han areas too. The other day, when we were supporting some college students, I asked about their parents. Many were divorced, and the children were from single-parent homes. At that moment, I thought, wow, these problems don't just exist in big cities. Even on the Tibetan plateau in sacred places, many changes that were never seen before are gradually occurring. So whether in practice or in life, I've always believed, practice must be steady, character must be steady, and one should finish what one starts. Finishing what you start doesn't mean attending the first class and then the very last class. That is not what finishing what you start means. All right, we will stop here today.
Bandara Banma Sadar